When you're in that cold session, your body and your mind is telling you to get out because it's so cold. It's saying, get out. Why are you subjecting? Like, get out. But you have to quiet the mind and let the process be the process. And then whenever 3 minutes are over, 2:45, whatever, you come out, it's like, wow, okay. Then you get yourself together, you get dressed, and next thing you know, about an hour or so later, it's like, wow, hold on for a second. My body feels different. Resilience is the ability to quiet the mind when it's telling you to quit, give up, etc., and still persist, through those uncomfortable places.
Welcome to the Love Your Brand podcast. If you're looking for real conversations with real people, you're in the right place. Let's go!
Let's go, let's go, let's go. Welcome to the Love Your Brand show. Got my man Marcus Benjamin in the house today. Marcus is a maverick, strategic thinker who's bullish about tomorrow. He's founder and CEO of Benjamin Strategy Group, which is a tech-enabled strategy and problem-solving firm based in Rock Hill, South Carolina, but with clients nationwide. After managing his first $1 million P&L at the age of 22, he had careers in banking and as an investment representative before starting his firm in 2008, though many ups and downs ensued. Today, the average client of the firm has an annual revenue of $7 million. Welcome, Mr. Marcus Benjamin.
Good having you, man.
Man, I'm glad to be here. I was actually thinking through. I'm like, man, because I didn't write that. So I was literally thinking like, okay, let's make sure everything here is accurate.
Is that accurate?
It is accurate. But, that's just kind of how it is sometimes. Sometimes people can be creative with words.
Right.
But no.
Embellish it a little bit.
Yeah, but that's accurate. Glad to be here, guys.
Thanks for having us, Marcus. And to be honest with you, we had last week we had a few slip ups on the intro.
I almost lost it a second ago.
Uh-oh.
So I had a hard time with the word success. I don't know why.
You can't
success.
say it.
Success. I was flipping over it. So I would intentionally put it into the intros. They would send me the intros, and so we had people on, and I would add it in there. And then when we would start it, I would nail it. And then I could feel him holding himself like about to burst, and I had to pause. I put my hand up one time in the middle of it, and I was like,
as we're introducing this guy.
As we're introducing it, well-known guy.
Can't get his name out before we start giggling.
Lose it. I'm like, restart. Take 2. Take 3. I'm praying. I'm like, Holy Spirit, to get right. Hey, get me right to get through this. Anyway, good times, man. Good times. I love doing it, and it's all about, authenticity, right? And I like to show mistakes. I like to show, putting one foot.
We show plenty of them.
Absolutely, absolutely. First one, we laugh for 30 minutes, right? But it's about moving, right?
That's it.
It's about taking steps. And if you never take that first step, you never take that second step.
That's right.
Right.
It's like what you read about Marcus, in his journey, a lot of ups and downs, which we'll tap into and share a little bit, because you never nail it right out the gate.
That's it.
And I mean, that line is never just straight like that. There's a lot of ups, a lot of some downs that come. If we knew that journey of entrepreneurship, I think none of us would hop into it.
No. I remember my mentor said, this was when I wrote my first book, he said, I was struggling to write it or struggling with the idea of writing it. And he said, just go ahead and write the book. It's going to be bad.
Okay. Did you pay this guy for that advice?
Listen, he said, it's going to be, he said, your first book is never great. He said, but you need to get it out. And then once you get it out, then you perfect it, then you enhance it, then you improve it, then you make it better. But if you're always trying to write it to make it right, you're never going to write it and get it out. That was a major.
That is huge.
Just get it out.
Man.
It's not going to be good. Just go ahead and get it out.
Yeah.
And I think that we sold 87 books. we sold 87, and probably 90% of them were family and friends.
Right. Exactly.
We did one book signing at Barnes & Noble, and we had about 10 or 15 people show up. But quite candidly, we really missed it on the marketing. But that's another conversation for another day. But long story short, it wasn't great, but it was a start. And we've written 15 books since then. And
that's good.
We've sold a whole lot more books than 80-something.
That's awesome. I think it wasn't Simon Sinek. It was somebody, they wrote a book called Just Start. And it's exactly that concept. you know, Jason and I, we chat all the time, and we have big visions, big goals. Like, man, that's where we want to go. And it can get you in a state of paralysis.
Right.
You know, you don't take action because you're just so up here in the clouds. And it's like, hey, put one step in front of the other. You know, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? Before you know, you turn around and you look, you're like, how do we accomplish all that? Took time, but a lot of baby steps, and just start.
Yeah.
So that's good advice.
Yeah, I wish I understood the concept of reverse engineering, 20 plus. So when I was in banking, I was, of course, an employee. Started my entrepreneurship journey was as an investment advisor. So I was, independent. And I wish I understood how to reverse engineer, how to, dream big, think big, plan big, strategize. And then now let's reverse this process and let's see now incrementally, what do I need to do backwards, forwards, instead of forwards, backwards.
Right.
And so, of course, I didn't learn that till a decade later, and I could have saved myself a lot of those ups and downs that we talked about earlier. Because, you just don't know what you don't know, right? And you've got passion, you've got grit, you've got, drive, but at the same time, there needs to be some intelligence, that's added to that in order for that learning curve between the passion and actually profiting, because it was a while before we saw profit.
You're spot on, Mark. It's like, I reverse engineer as well. So if I'm working with a client, we look at the end goal, where you want to go. It's so much easier to come back. All right, these are 12-month goals, 6 month, 3 months, 1 month. You put an action plan in place. And if I would have chosen that decades ago, it's like, that's for the easy journey, because we all want easy. Nobody likes hard. Nobody likes complicated. Nobody really likes challenging or change. But it's like, those taught us so much as well, when we go through it, because it built so much muscle. And so I think where we are today, when we reach different levels of success in our own mind, it's because of that journey that we went on. And so if you would have just come right out of the gate, like knowing how to reverse engineer it, I think there would have been so many things that were lost that you didn't learn on the journey.
Right.
I think the biggest thing, 20 plus years in this business, being a part of so many launches, so many rebrands, so many startups, so many, corporate repositioning, they've got these big visions. And I think, a skill that I kind of honed in on is keeping things simple, right? It's, you come in, you've got this complex, like, wow, how are we going to get here? And I'm like, hey guys, let's take steps, let's break it down. Let's break it down into actionable steps, action plan. Let's put it in action. And, I don't know where it came from. Maybe I'm just, a simple-minded person, and it just came in handy, right? So, and hey, I take that with great compliments, because I feel like sometimes a lot of, being simple, and just common, having a common mindset, almost no nonsense. Let's get to the point. Let's go get it. Sometimes that's what's needed to achieve.
Sometimes, and I think this probably applies to you as well. Simplicity is genius, right? It's a form of genius, because a person who has the ability to see and connect dots easily, and of course, sort of see through the fray, see through the clouds, see through all of the data, see through all of the minutia that people think is really going on, and be able to get this down to our lowest common denominator really quickly. So we do have a tendency to maybe to oversimplify things, but at the same time, simplicity is still a genius. And I've been involved in a lot of complicated things, but the greatest success that we've had is when we've been able to connect those dots and make the complex simple. And then when people see it, it's like, oh wow, that's how you do that. Yes, when in reality they were just getting consumed by things that really weren't, or that really didn't matter to the end goal.
I found so many, I think personal brands especially, they think we have to use big words and this big language, and it makes us look smart. It makes us look educated. It makes us look like we have everything together, when what it does is more the deer in the headlights look. Like when an audience is watching, they're like, I don't understand what you're saying, because you're using all this insider language, big words, kind of a concept. And to where, we are simple beings. And it's like when we talk about marketing, I was just talking about this yesterday as we had a workshop with a client, and the curse of knowledge. And so the curse of knowledge is, for people that don't understand this, you have your product, and on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 is like, you know your product inside and out.
Got
and
it.
for our own products, we know it inside and out. We know the technical
Technically, yep.
data,
Yep.
everything about it.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't communicate that to our audience because they're just it's going to go over their head. And then they're going to be like, I don't understand. I'm going to go find a brand that makes sense to me. And so we dumb it down and we think, all right, I'm going to take it to like a 5 or a 6. And then my audience is really going to understand it. So we take it to a 5 or a 6. We communicate it, put it on our website, our collateral. They're still deer in the headlights look, because where people buy is when it's communicated in that 1 to 2 range,
Right.
to where you take it something from so high level down to so simple. And when I would write messaging for brands and great websites for brand, I'm putting something so simple. Like if you had a dentist as a client, you write out specifically what a dentist does. We make crowns for people, kind of a thing. People are like, no, that's too simple. It's like, that's going to get people to convert. And we do split tests. We do landing pages, of a more complex message or simple. Simple, 99% of the time,
It's going to win.
would win every single time. And so we overcomplicate every single thing in life.
Yeah, I think common sense. As I was saying common earlier, I think that's why I was trying to nail in on just common sense. Which unfortunately is hard to find nowadays, right? It's it's like, hold on, A and B, right?
It is
Then you go to
2024.
C, like,
Man,
what's
listen.
going on?
Listen.
Information stagnation. That's what I
Listen.
always use that, right? It's
You're
like, hold on, we got to get this. We got to get certified in this. We got to learn this. We got to do this, and
Right.
then we'll be ready. Well, you could do that forever.
That's it.
You'll never be ready.
That's it.
Right?
That's it.
You just got to go for it. So resilience, man. I know we were talking earlier, Marcus. I mean, you've been through some stuff, right?
Right.
You know a little bit about resilience. I
Yeah.
think a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, they hit roadblocks.
Mm-hmm.
They hit things that, put them down. Like, man, can I do this? Can I break through this? And the truth is you're going to have a lot of failures, like your first book. Right?
Failure.
That's how you learn.
Yeah.
Right? Fail hard, fail fast.
It was an
learn.
expensive failure, I'm telling you. It was an expensive failure. Listen, in the literal sense of the term. Oh God.
But one thing that you told me about, a story, we play ball together. He's a decent hooper.
How's he?
It's just that decent word is just kind of, I'm not sure if it's giving me the wrong vibe.
I was about to ask you something.
hey.
I was like, decent?
I'm playing with him.
Nobody
I'm
wants to
playing
be
with him.
described as decent.
I'm joking with him. He's good. He's good. He's a good player. He's a good player. And he's been in the game for a while.
Listen, we both been, our bodies are like, listen,
Yep.
after about 4 or 5 games, we're like, man.
Hey.
listen,
So Jason's decent too.
yeah, he's decent. If that's the
Decent,
terminology.
right.
Hey, I KT tape,
taped up for
ankle
life,
bracelets. I got my massage guns. I mean,
Man, you can't taped up for the studio.
dude, I can't. Hey, that's how it is when you gotta. My wife, for what she get me for something not long ago, she got me some cryo sessions.
Oh, wow.
So I'm
Nice.
pretty excited about.
Oh no,
that.
that's gonna be really good, man. I've been doing cryo for about 3 years. I
Dude,
love it.
I've never done it, but she got me 3 sessions.
Okay.
I think it was for Father's Day, and I'm pretty pumped up.
That's a good gift.
No, man, listen. I tell people all the time, it's like the worst 3 minutes of your life
Oof.
to feel amazing for the rest of the day. Those 3 minutes are like, oh my gosh. But man, within 10 minutes or so after a cryo session, your body feels different. I mean, and for those of us who hoop and play and are athletic, we all know what recovery looks like, right? And so if you play in the morning, you kind of know this recovery is going to take me X hours or maybe X days or whatnot. And it shrinks that. I guess we're doing some spots for cryo right now, but
Dude, they're a sponsor. We want to
Restore here in Rock Hill.
give you a
Coming
shout.
to visit.
listen, exactly right. But no, but
Dude, I don't know if you heard yourself. There were so many nuggets in that. He said that there was 3 minutes. There's such pain in that, uncomfortable discomfort, but it sets you up for all this, for feeling so good for the rest of the day. That goes everything in business. That goes everything in life, in our relationships. Are we willing to press into a little bit of the uncomfortable? Are we willing to press in a little bit of discomfort to get here?
right.
That's good, man.
No, that's really good.
I mean, that's
You can
resilience,
preach on that.
right?
Stop playing.
That's
No, it is.
Stop
Oh,
playing.
oh gosh, stop playing. It is resilience because when you're in that cold session, everything your body and your mind is telling you to get out.
Quit.
Like, because it's so cold, it's saying get out. Why are you subjecting it? Like, get out. But you have to quiet the mind, right? and let the process be the process. And then when those 3 minutes are over, or 2:45, whatever, you come out, it's like, wow, okay. And then you get yourself together, you get dressed, and next thing you know, about an hour or so later, it's like, wow, hold on for a second. My body feels different, you know? So resilience is the ability to quiet the mind when it's telling you to quit, give up, etc., and still persist, you know, through those uncomfortable places.
And when you're passionate in business, love your brand, and you hit these roadblocks, like you, I know we're both passionate about playing ball. We enjoy it. It's competitive, and I'm able to run, and I don't even realize I'm running.
And you want to laugh? Since I'm laughing, every time I finish playing basketball, I quit. Like every time I finish playing, my body feels so like I'm done.
I'm done.
Why are you doing this?
I'm done.
Like you're 45, bro. What are you doing? Like, you know, just and then the next morning you wake up, it's like none of that mattered. You wake up, listen, when next time we hoop it, you know, let me check the chat.
I'm healing for like 2 hours with the massage gun, got the heat pack on. You know, that's business, you know, and then, I mean, Marcus,
but it's the power of the mind, you know, as you touched upon, you know, I believe our body, we can push our bodies to so much, you know, the mind tells the body what to do. The mind tells the body when to quit. So as he's talking about resilience, it's like, that is exactly it, you know, because at the end of it, like if I go play basketball or any kind of sport, I'm the guy that can play all day long. You know, just never quit. And everybody wants to take a break, and I'm just like, come on, you know,
let's keep out here. Now, how old are you now?
45.
Oh man, listen, I need to drink what you drinking. I need some of that.
I didn't finish the story.
Oh, I need a little bit
because then it sounds all good when I'm out there, and then once we quit and we're done, I mean, I'm on the floor. You know, it's like you're mopping me up. It's like, oh my gosh, my body. It's the same thing as you. But then you want to play again tomorrow. I will muster it up. My mind says I can do it, and I have what it takes. I'm strong. I'm all this stuff, and you know, speaking to your own identity and to yourself.
Right.
But then you know, you get done. It's like, all right, man, I'm going to be resilient. I'm going to choose resilience today.
Listen, man, I had a coach who was a Green Beret, and he.
Basketball coach?
Yeah, basketball coach.
Okay.
He was strength and conditioning, but he ended up being a basketball coach. So there's a whole nother gear in my head that I tell my kids all the time. Y'all don't ever want to experience that gear, right? And it's nowhere near, of course, what, you know, those guys, you know, did. But he had what he called Hell Week for every guard who's going to play for him. If you're going to play for me, you've got to go through Hell Week. Let me tell you something.
I mean, with that name,
it was the worst. Listen to me. It was the no. They won when we were done. He was picking me up off the floor. My legs were convulsing.
Oof.
I mean, I was just like shaking like this, and I thought I was dying. And he said, "You're not dying. Your body is just in shock." He picked me up, put me in the backseat of his car. He drove me home, picked me up out of the backseat, took me in the house, put me on my mom's couch, you know, and said, "Mrs. Benjamin, he'll be all right. Just let him lay here for a couple hours. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. Don't worry about it." And that was 7 days. But around day 5, he tells the story. I don't remember it. He tells the story, or he's no longer alive now, but so he had a drill that you would do, and it was, which I'm not going to go through all of that, but long story short, you had to get to 100 makes. But your 100 makes, you're going back and forth from 3-point line to 3-point line, right? 3-point line to 3-point line, but you got to get 2. You got to make both sides for it to be 1.
Oh, my
so
gosh.
Boom, boom, 1. Boom, boom, 2. Boom, boom. That's how you have to get to 100. And he said somewhere around 75, 76, he said, you got in flow. Now, mind you, I don't remember anything other than literally I was shooting the basketball. My hand did like this, and the ball went through the net, and I collapsed. That's all I remember. He said, of course, you know, back then they didn't have cameras and recording, things like that. He said, man, your body was in such a rhythm, your mind and your body. And he said, fatigue was gone. It was just you it was just you and the goal. And he said, I just sat and watched you go from 76 or whatever the number was to 100. Now, mind you, I would have loved to see that. We were recording it. But coming back around to our point, there's a type of muscle memory, there's a type of resilience that comes, and there's a flow state that happens through resilience. And a lot of times people don't hit that Malcolm Gladwell tipping point, right? To where that flow state or that rhythm occurs, because they keep starting and stopping, starting and stopping, starting and stopping and starting and stopping, and they never get into the rhythm. But you've got to keep going until that rhythm happens. And for those of us, when you hoop, it's like, hold on for a second. You see what's going to happen before it happens, right? Because you got into a flow state. You realize you've done this so many times. And I think that same principle applies to business, that when you're not giving yourself reasons to quit, and you stay being persistent, it creates a muscle memory and a perspective that other people look at. I wonder, how is he doing that? Well, they just didn't quit. They just kept, they took 6 months off. They took 3 weeks off. They keep taking time off. But this guy over here, this lady over here, they've learned that mental mastery that you talked about a few moments ago, and which is a major part of resilience, because your emotions are going to always tell you. Yes. I mean, that first book, you know how many times, I would lay in the bed at night, you're a failure.
Oh, man.
Laying in the bed at night, we done spent this money, publishing company, all this kind of this type of stuff, and...
Were you already married at the time, have a family?
Oh, married, married and 2 kids. Married and 2 kids. That made it even worse, right?
Exactly.
That made it even worse. And
if I fail, I have these other people that I'm failing too.
And all these thoughts, and you're laying there. Thankfully, being a person of prayer, that was significant, being able to go to God's word, and read what he said about me outside of, the things we're endeavoring to do. That was a major part of it. And then, one of my mentors said to me at that time, of course, he said, just go and get it out of your system, right? Just go and do it. It's not going to be great. Just go and do it. But he came back to me. He said, now that you've done it, now what do you need to learn from this? He said, don't let this be an expensive lesson that you never learn. It needs to be an expensive lesson that you learn from, so you apply it to the next one. And a couple of things came from that, but one of the things was marketing. And Robert Kiyosaki talked about it years later in his book Rich Dad Poor Dad, but but it was the title of best-selling author, not best written author, or best written author. I'm so focused on trying to write the best book. I'm not understanding that just because I wrote the best book, that doesn't mean that book's gonna sell.
Wow.
It's the best-selling author that sells books. And my mentor said the best books on business and finance are sitting on a bookshelf somewhere, and they've never been purchased, because the author was information-driven rather than sales-driven. That changed my whole perspective.
Wow.
And I'm like, man, I needed to know that like 2 years earlier.
So how did that affect book number 2?
Quite candidly, even with you guys and what you guys do, I became the brand. So it wasn't just I'm writing a book and something that's separate from me, and we're endeavoring to sell this book. No, one, I've got to represent what it is that we're talking about. And by represent, I'm not just talking about the concepts or the principles, but in sense of the visibility that's attached to it. So it was many book tours. It wasn't just book signings. It was many book tours. It was having conversations with organizations. Hey, bring Marcus in. Have Marcus talk about this. This is the story connected to why he did what he did. So all of those pieces were then added. The next thing you know, so our second book was, First one was finance. It was economics. What was the second book? The second one was faith and business. The second one was faith and business. I can't remember the name of it. This was like 2009. It's somewhere out there, whatever. No, it's not. I'm wrong. There it is. It just came to me. Successophobia. Successophobia, still on Amazon today. And it was dealing with why people are afraid of being successful. Wow. That there's a fear or a phobia attached to success. And the basics of the book was, to be successful will require you to become a different person. And we fear becoming someone that we haven't known. Right? And that's one of the reasons why most people enjoy living vicariously through the success of other people. That's why celebrities are celebrities. That's why celebrity magazines, TV shows, or whatever, is because people get to live through somebody else's life. So they're able to vicariously experience success through what someone else is doing on the red carpet, or what someone else is doing at a Golden Globes or whatever. Let's go back to basketball, right? Basketball fans, right? We hoop, we play ball. But we all live vicariously through the people who are what? who are playing basketball on television, because that's something that was in us, and whether it materialized to whatever extent, it's still something that we identify with. And so in that book, I had to represent that. Like I wasn't just selling a book. Now I'm talking about success everywhere I went. And so that second book, we ended up doing about 13,000 copies in about 8 months. So that was like,
it's a little jump from 87.
Listen, 87, man. But that was directly connected to, from a brand standpoint, realizing it's not just the book. I got to talk about Marcus. I got to talk about Marcus's story. And that was something I was uncomfortable with, because I grew up from a church standpoint, and from the way I was raised is that you don't talk about yourself. You don't promote yourself. You don't do those things, right? But we all watch people who do that every day. Right. But that's not for you to do. So I had to unhack my brain, right? And unlearn, because self-promotion was just not a habit or a concept that was. And I mean self-promotion in the best sense of the term. 100%. It just wasn't a virtue in my family and in my community. It was just, no, you don't do that.
And there's been such a rise of the personal brands over the years, to where, like you said, you could go on Amazon, you could type in fear of success, and you could get 1 million books to choose from.
Right.
Everybody's written a lot of the same things, through their own experiences. But somebody's going to connect with your story and the way you communicate and your home life growing up versus the way that Jason did versus the way I did.
Right.
And it's more of that invite. That's what marketing is. It's inviting somebody into that story. And to where a brand, the athletes we follow, the celebrities we follow, the business mentors that we follow, there's a reason that we follow each of the ones that we do. It's their values. It's their morals. It's how they approach things. It's their philanthropic contributions to the world. Like, there's all these things that make us follow it. It's not because their book necessarily or their resources are better than somebody else. It's just that it communicates to the heart of me.
Right.
So that's where, like, when I hear that, it's like, nah, you have something, you have an audience that is attracted to the way that you communicate. It's attracted to the vulnerability and authenticity of what you share, of your home life growing up that brought you where you are today, your failures, your ability. Because nobody wants that person up there that's just perfect. Hey, you've never met, or it's a facade.
Correct.
You've never messed up. You've had the great life.
I've always known it.
Exactly. It's like, come on, BS meter goes off.
Right.
I love to hear people that, hey, this is how I struggled. This is what I learned through it. This is how I overcame it, because it's like, all right, you're real, and I feel you're not better than me. You're not less than me. And it's almost like you come alongside and help me get where I want to be.
Mm. Resilience, man. Do you mind sharing your story? I mean, you found your personal brand, right?
Right.
And you've written a lot of books. How many books have
15.
you written? 15.
Congratulations.
Jeez.
That's awesome.
I said a couple earlier, so what do I 15, man?
That was the first. Sorry, the first one was in 2008.
The first one was 2008. Yes.
That's a lot.
That was the one that didn't go anywhere.
Right.
That's 80. That's 86.
Well, I mean, that was the one that brought 14 more.
Exactly.
That's a lot.
Do you mind sharing that story you shared at the event?
Yeah. So from a resilience standpoint, I've been an entrepreneur since I was 20. I left BB&T when I was 25. Then I was with Citi from 25 to 27. So that was my first entrepreneurial journey, because even though I was an investment advisor under the Citi umbrella, it was still an entrepreneurial endeavor. It wasn't like you had a boss telling you what to do. You had to build it out, build your book of business, so on and so forth. So that's where it started. And so that resilience factor transitioned from being raised in a semi-difficult environment, then transferred over to my approach to business. But I didn't know that, when I was 41, that I would have kidney failure. So COVID came, and I was dealing with stage 2 kidney failure beforehand, which was being managed by diet and exercise and, just the way that I lived my life. So, there was really no immediate need to do anything drastic at that point. But COVID came in 2020, and I contracted COVID in 2020 and went from stage 2 to stage 5.
Wow.
So I immediately went on dialysis. So it was like, hold on for a second. I thought I was just a little sick. And the nephrologist came in. We were at the Medical University of South Carolina. And the nephrologist came in and said, Mr. Benjamin, you can't leave because you have COVID. Number 2, you can't leave because your creatinine level registers a stage 5 kidney failure. We're going to do this test again in the morning. And if it's confirmed, then you're going to start dialysis tomorrow afternoon. Start what? Dialysis. And so started dialysis that afternoon, that next day, that afternoon. So because it was a COVID times, of course, my wife had to leave. You know, she was, in a sense, you know, effectively put out. Thank God for FaceTime. You know, thank God for FaceTime. You know, we could, you know, talk in that regard with her and the kids. But so I was there on the COVID quarantine unit for 9 days by myself, and had 1, 2, 3, 4 dialysis sessions, which were 4 hours apiece. And so I remember when the lady walked in, and she was a nurse, and she pushed this little cart in, and it was, you know, maybe, you know, 4 by 6 or a little cart in. I'm like, okay, you know, it's not going to be that bad. And that was just one part of the machine. And she goes back out, and she gets another part of the machine. Then she goes back out and gets another part of the machine. So there's 3 parts of this machine that she brings in that becomes this huge monster of a machine. And so mind you, like, again, man, I, you know, athlete playing basketball, etc. And now, you know, they put a port in my chest, and I'm watching blood cycle in and out of my body for 4 hours. So I asked her, I said, so how long is a session? And she said, you know, 3.5 to 4 hours. I said, so you mean to tell me I have to sit here, lay here for 4 hours? She said, yeah. Like, is there a break? She says, no. It's 4 hours.
You're by yourself. No
and
family.
You're by yourself. No family. Thank God for my relationship with God, you know, because no one else is there. No visitors. Only people that I saw were nurses, you know, nurses and doctors. And so that was, again, you know, 9 days. I kind of fast forward through that story because it's just a lot of detail, you know, in that. So I ended up going home again 9 days later to start dialysis, and was doing dialysis for 3 days a week, 4 hours a time, and thank God for my relationship with God. Thank God for people who were praying for me and praying with me. Thank God for my wife and for my kids. They, you know, they were amazing. But the resilience component was from one, just the mindset of making this transition, because the thoughts you have is, okay, is this the rest of my life? Like, so you have those thoughts, like, is this something that I'm going to have to live with for the rest of my life? That's one. And then, well, what about the business? What about the clients? What about, you know, so then you got that dynamic. Thankfully, there were, you know, systems that we had in place and people that we had in place who were able to manage the business. And they tell you all the time, listen, we didn't grow at all. I mean, we lost a lot of, you know, I mean, COVID, I think we lost 1.7 million in revenue in 2000. And then 2001, you know, was right at about 900, 925, something like that. So lost revenue. Significant loss. I mean, significant. But thankfully, we were able to pay the people that we needed to pay. We were, you know, take care of the people that we need to take care of. But the story that I tell people from an entrepreneurial standpoint, even from a system standpoint, is the last thing my wife had to think about was the mortgage payment, the car payment. You know, she didn't have to think about money. She had to be concerned about me, but she didn't have that issue. So that's another facet to successful entrepreneurship. But I made a decision that this was not going to be the rest of my life. And that was a decision. It wasn't optimism. It wasn't wishful thinking. It wasn't, which again, I have nothing wrong with optimism or wishful thinking. I mean, you know, being optimistic, you know, is better than being pessimistic. Right. You know, so I have no issues with that. But this was beyond pessimism or optimism. It was a clear decision. This is, and I would literally, I was before that I was 100 and maybe 95 pounds, lean muscle. I mean, ready to go, man. Like, come on, man. You know, listen, hoop session. When we balling, man. When we balling, let's go.
He was decent at the time.
I was decent, man. I was, you know, decent. And at that time, I was 147, 48 pounds. So I lost about 50 pounds of lean muscle because I was a smaller athletic guy. And I didn't realize, of course, you learn this, but when you're on dialysis, the machine is doing in 4 hours what your kidney does in 24 hours.
Wow.
So it's a lot of energy your body is using to work with that machine to filter out, you know, the toxins from your body. But I didn't have any fat for that energy pool. So after, of course, when you exercise, when you get sugar out of your body, if you're not building muscle, what's the next thing that happens? It starts coming for lean muscle, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what began to happen. And so I lost, right at 40 pounds of lean muscle.
Man.
And I would be in my house, and I would get up, and I would walk down the stairs, and I would go out, and I would walk around the cul-de-sac. And it would take me 20 minutes to walk around my cul-de-sac. And I said, I'm going to walk around this cul-de-sac. I'm going to go upstairs. And it'd take me time to do it. And of course, my wife's like, I said, sweetheart, I've got to make these decisions. I mean, doctors can do what doctors can do. We've got great doctors. God's going to do what God's going to do. But Marcus got to do what Marcus got to do. And Marcus sitting in the bed upstairs is not Marcus doing what Marcus is supposed to do. So what I'm not going to do is come home. And there'd be days I would come home and I would just be so exhausted. I would fall asleep on a chair. And I'd fall asleep for 2 or 3 hours. And I would wake up and say, okay, Marcus, get up. Get up. Get up. And I would have to mental management, right? Talk to myself, get up, go walk around, etc. And everybody saying, you need to rest. Nope. I appreciate everything you're telling me, but that's not the decision that I made. And, let me kind of get through that story. So, July 7th, 2021, I had successful live donor kidney transplant surgery. So again, this coming Sunday will be 3 years from that. And the way that happened was another major God factor, which is a whole nother story by itself. But went through live donor kidney transplant surgery. And so I ended up being out of the office for almost 18 months, from start to back in the office. But had live donor transplant surgery. I mean, within, about 3 weeks, went back, and the way that my body was responding to the new kidney, the way that it was literally, I had surgery in July. In September, I was back in the gym.
Wow.
And that's not supposed to happen.
No.
My nephrologist, my transplant surgeon, everything was like, Marcus, listen, you can't get hit in your gut right now, and you don't lift any weights, but you can walk, you can run, you can jog, you can do whatever. And so then that went on from September to, October, November, just kind of slowly, incrementally getting myself back. And then went through physical therapy, did physical therapy from January 22, mid-January until around April 2022. And that's when I started back playing basketball. And, and I was horrible. I was horrible. Listen, because again, I had no lean. I mean, because I had to build my body back over. And I can remember my kids, both of them are ball players, my daughter and my son, and they would go to the gym. They're like, Dad, we're going to the Y, need us to bring anything, back from you, back for you from the store. And I said, no, I'm going to the gym with you. It's like, Dad, I said, no, I'm going to the gym with you. And there was a time that I literally couldn't even catch a basketball. Like my daughter would stay, 3 or 4 feet away, and she would throw a ball to me like that. And I would try to squeeze it just to grab a basketball. And I said, throw it again. I mean, it was like literally learning, like, people have to learn how to walk again. I mean, it was like that basic of that simplicity, of how I had to start rebuilding my body, rebuilding my mind. But I tell people all the time, it started with that decision. I was in the hospital at Mercy here in Charlotte, Super Bowl Sunday, 2021. And there was nobody in ICU but me. Literally, the head nurse came and said, listen, you're going to get a lot of attention tonight, sir, because there's nobody here but you, and we were there. But it was that night. It was that night when I was, at Mercy, and just a lot of time to reflect, pray, think, do a little bit of writing. And that was when I made the decision. Like, and I know there are a lot of people who think different ways about certain things, but the way I approach life is, if I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose on my terms. I'm not going to lose on somebody else's terms.
That's right.
If I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose on mine. Everybody does their part. The nephrologists do their part. The surgeons do their part. The dialysis staff, they do their part. My wife did her part, amazingly. My kids, did their part amazingly. But there's a part of this that Marcus has. And that part is not just laying on a couch, sitting there, hoping something changes. Laying there, hoping something gets better. Doing nothing is not an option. And so I made a decision that night that when I got home from the hospital, that every time I had the thought of impotence, paralysis, incompetence, unable, I was going to do something specific that counteracted those emotions. Every single time I would have that, whether that was 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, whether it was, and there were days it was, I mean, I would be in tears. I would be in tears. It would be so painful, in tears. But those were decisions that were made. And I believe God's grace was a part of that resilience factor that made all of that possible. So it's certain, I'm not saying work ethic, you know, and self-determination, but I believe there's a grace factor, you know, that is present. And reading, I can't remember what the passage is right now, but Paul said somewhere in Corinthians about God's grace was given to me not in vain, and I labored more abundantly than others. Yet not I, but God's grace that was in me. So that really gave me a push, because like, hold on for a second. There's this factor of grace that has to do with work ethic.
Absolutely.
And when I read that, oh, it was game over at that point. Like, okay, listen, now those little subtle feelings that, you know, or thoughts that people would say about, well, Marcus, you can't make your body get well. And I said, listen, I understand that. But me sitting here doing nothing isn't helping my body get well. Moving is going to help my body get well. You know, getting out, getting fresh air, you know, getting that vitamin D, walking down the block, having people, you know, poke their windows out like, what's going on with that guy? You know, and I remember, and I'll say this, you know, and so I had, it was like 57 boxes of medication showed up at my house on a Monday morning. Can you imagine what the neighbor, can you just think about this for a second. We all got neighbors, right? And can you imagine UPS coming and just dropping 50, I mean, when I opened my door, it was like, what in, so my neighbor was like, what is this guy selling? Like, what is going on over there, man? But I remember that day, and I couldn't even get out of my door. So I said, well, I can just go out to the garage. But it's like, Isaiah's not here, Destiny's not here, oh, Mika, she can't bring it. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to start bringing these boxes in. Now, mind you, my wife, you know, we had the Ring doorbell thing or whatever. So, of course, I'm glad she wasn't monitoring that, because she would have been fussing. Marcus! She would have been fussing through the ring. You know, whatever. But that was in late April. And I remember taking those boxes and putting them in the garage, And that was such an accomplishment for me. I mean, I felt like on top of the world, like, man, I was able to put those boxes in that somebody else would look at as so simple. And then certainly be trying to get this stuff out of the way before my neighbors, you know, trying to figure out what's happening.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, that's just a whole, I mean, that and getting back into the office, going through that process, getting back in the rhythm, and recommitting ourselves to building the kind of company that we had in mind before, but then using it as a way to serve more people and bless more people and help more people. So that's where that resilience became real for me. Like, if you don't manage your mind and your emotions, and then of course, you know, some people, you know, of course, will go through sicknesses and challenges, whatever. But in reality, in business, we all have those days when nothing that we're doing, it feels like it's working, right? We know we're doing all the right things, but it's like, hold on for a second, like nothing is happening. You know, you look at the numbers, it's like flat or declining, or because you're like, hold on for a second, I know I've got the right habits in place. I know we're doing the right thing, but nothing looks like it's working. That process for me was even more crystallized going through that sickness, is because I didn't know what was going on in my body. It was just what the medication and what the readings were telling us. And we ended up having, and I'll stop here, but we ended up having the lead surgeon and the chief surgeon at Medical University of South Carolina was the one who did our surgery for us back in 2021. And it was funny because people were kind of looking at like who is this guy? Like, who is this guy? Who is this guy? You know? And I told my wife, I said, does it feel like people staring at me? And she was like, I kind of feel a little uncomfortable too. You know, it's like, but it was just like kind of that kind of thing or whatever. And so they kind of started getting me hooked up or whatever. And come to find out, the surgeon, he rarely, when I say rarely, meaning, you know, doctors do volume of surgeries. You know, he does did 3 or 4 surgeries a month. And I was one of the surgeries that he did, you know. And so they were trying to figure out who is this guy that the chief, you know, surgeon at Medical University of South Carolina is the one who's doing his surgery. So that's what they were trying to figure out. But, you know, that was a God thing. You know, that was a God thing. They gave us an amazing surgeon, amazing team of people who were part of that process. So that's another one of my stories of resilience. So
yeah, he learned. He had to learn how to play ball again. You know, from the ground
From
up.
the ground up.
You're talking about in business. I mean, yeah, you had a pretty big hit in business.
Yeah.
So then you came back, but you're hitting harder than ever now,
Right.
right? I mean, you learned
I learned
through that time. Now you're about strategy and scaling,
right.
Like,
Well, there are so many nuggets in that story. Like, I mean, there's so many lessons. Like, you know, as I'm hearing, I mean, you had such intentionality, you know, which I think in business or in life, you know, you have to have intentionality.
Right.
You know, set your sights on something. We go after what's important to us, you know, what we prioritize. And even like when you're kids, you said that they were going to the Y that day, and, you know, you're like, no, I'm going with you. What an example you set for them, you know, for them to see that, you know, it's
Right.
not always about what we say, it's about what we do.
good.
And for them to see that, like, they immediately like, man, my dad is XYZ, you know, he's a fighter. He doesn't give up. You know,
Right.
he's resilient. He's always
Right.
saying, so you taught your children such a valuable lesson in that. And then like the last thing, the quote that keeps coming up to my mind is, life happens for you, not to you. And so often I've heard this, you know, so many times. I mean, we complain so often. The tendency is to complain, like, why does all this always happen to me? You know, life happening to me, you know,
Right.
this and that. And it's like, you can choose to look at it from that perspective. if
And
you
I dealt
want.
with that. And I dealt with that for about 3 months.
Yeah.
Because, you know, from my context, taking care of my body, you know, didn't smoke, didn't drink, you know, in the gym 3-4 times a week. That's been my life since I've been 15, 16.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, hold on for a second.
Why is this happening to me?
How in the world?
I take
And
care
what
of
is-
myself.
I'm taking care of myself. I'm doing all this stuff, and not all of out of the blue. What? Kidney failure? Are you kidding me?
Wow.
You know, but circling back around, a major reason from a medical standpoint why my body responded the way that it did after surgery and transplant was because my body didn't have to fight anything else. Like I didn't have congestive heart failure or diabetes or you know lung issues because of smoking or drinking and things like that. Like there was nothing else that my body had to do was accept this kidney. So all of those decisions that were made from what my thought was should have prevented me from having this experience actually worked for my benefit
So good,
on
man.
the other side of the experience. Because when people look, they're like, there's no way this guy had kidney transplant surgery. There's no way. Well, yes. And because of those decisions that were made when the transplant occurred, my body didn't have to figure out how to do all this other stuff.
That's so good. And that was the last thing I was going to say about that. It's like, I believe our life summed up is the summation of all these small decisions we make over our life.
That's it.
And to where when you look at it, it's like everything was just one small choice, one small decision, you know, that can lead. It's like that 1 degree. I can't remember. It's a law or concept or something, like 1 degree. You know, you make 1 degree change. It looks so small, like it's not going to affect anything. Over the course of a year, 5 years, 10 years, that 1 degree is exponential in what it affected and what it did. But it started with that one small conscious, intentional decision. And so, I mean, I just heard a lot of intentional decisions that you made, and it was all rooted, you know, it all, the intentionality, you know, was what created that resilience in you to where, all right, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it. And this is what that decision looks like today. I'm going to walk around the cul-de-sac. It's taking me 20 minutes to walk around this cul-de-sac. People are peeking through the blinds. Like, what's wrong with this man out here? There's boxes on my front door, which one day you could pick up all 10 by yourself.
Yes.
And now you're like, hey, I'm winded. I can barely get it to the garage, but I'm going to do it. You made these small decisions. And now here you are 45 years later. You put the muscle back on. You know,
Yes,
your health is, you know, I'm assuming is great.
And
You're
a decent
basketball
player. Decent.
Now you're still a decent
I'm still a decent basketball player, man. I'm still decent.
The story
That's a
when he
t-shirt right
started.
there. Decent basketball player.
Look, the
That's it.
story when he told
Walking
me he
to the gym,
started,
decent.
he started playing back, and he was like, man, he was just learning. So, but he said
Gosh.
one time, but then that memory started kicking back in,
Muscle
right?
memory.
And suddenly he was getting back there. And some guys he was playing with was like, hold on, who is this guy?
That's
Like,
it.
hold on, we've been playing with this guy for a while. And he
They were like, hold on, because literally, I mean, it was like maybe, you know, playing with these guys for maybe 2 or 3 months. And in mine, I sucked. Like, it was so bad. I mean, it was so bad.
Is that true, Jason? I mean, was he terrible?
Listen, man, it was.
I didn't know
he
him
didn't
at
remember
the
that. He
time.
didn't
Oh,
remember that.
okay.
It was so bad. I mean, you know, your hip flexors, you know, your back, all the things you need to
Everything.
run and jump and things like that. I had nothing. And so I'm going through physical therapy, trying to get myself back. And I mean, coordination was off, trying to go through my legs. It's like the ball. I'm like, oh my God. It was bad, guys. So they're like, hey, you know, so this is the gym. They're like, man, who is this black dude that's horrible like that? Like, what is this? You know, it was bad. And so I ended up being away for about 3 weeks, you know, business and just being away for about 3 weeks, but still going to therapy, you know, working out, and so 3 weeks can change a whole lot.
Oh, yeah.
So I came back that, you know, 3 weeks later, or about 3 weeks, and it was maybe the second or third game we were playing. And man, some of those instincts started kicking back in, man.
Wow.
And I remember, I mean, like, and it was like, and I'm excited because I couldn't do that before, you know. And they was looking at me when the game was there, like, hold on a second, were you playing with us? And I said, and that's when I had to tell them the story.
Yeah.
Because they thought that I was just kind of like playing
Sandbagging,
around.
just
So
messing with them.
I was like, no, guys, I'm trying to work my way back up from ground zero.
Wow.
Like ground zero, man.
So how is that when, like, so in your head, you know, I know how to ball. I know how to do a crossover. I know how to dribble. I know how to do this. And then you're trying and your body is just not letting you do this stuff. Like, is it frustrating? Is it comical? Is it just like...
It was comical. It was comical afterwards. Because then, you're basketball players, right? You know, you're thinking back over the game. You're like, bro, how did you look, man? I mean, you probably looked like whatever. But when it's happening, you're right. I mean, I know I can do this.
Right.
I know I can do a one dribble pull up. And my body is like, no, you can't. No, you can't.
It makes me think of the dream. I don't know if y'all ever have a dream where you've gotten in a fight, and it's like, I've had a number of dreams where I got in a fight and I don't know how to punch. And it's like I'm punching in slow motion. I'm a foot away from their face.
I've had that one.
And I'm in my head, I'm like,
Just
hit him. Hit him. You know, jab, cross or whatever. And I just can't. That's what I think.
No,
you're looking at yourself like, you know how to do this, Marcus. Why can't you do it?
But, you know, to that same point, bringing it back around to business, that was actually one of the concepts that I actually implemented, is because when we lost, this significant revenue, and we had built this pattern of what we were doing and how we were, the approach we took to building our business, and we had put it in place in 2017, December. So 18, 19, I mean, we were in a good rhythm at that point. Mm-hmm. But of course, you know, COVID and then of course me and all of that, it just, in a sense, washed that away. So I remember talking to my banker, and so we were, you know, having to renew some lines of credit. You know how that works. Well, you know, Mr. Benjamin, you aren't where you were. You know, you know how all of that works. And I said, listen, I understand. I said, but here's the deal. I've built this before. I said, so you're not guaranteeing or, you know, renewing something for someone who hasn't done this. This is not an experiment. Right. You know, I've built this before. We've done this before. And because of the issues that transpired, that's the reason why it all went away. I said, so that's what's going to happen. The next 2 years, I'm going to build it all back. Now, here's the thing. And I told her, I said, now, here's the deal. Either this money is going to come to your bank or it's going to somebody else's bank. I said, now, the people who helped me rebuild are the ones who are going to get the deposits. So if that's not within your wheelhouse to do, I understand that. But understand, millions of dollars will be deposited into somebody's bank. It just depends on who's going to help me rebuild or not.
I bet you got them too.
Listen, hands down. It's up to you. Listen, I'm sorry.
That's so good.
I was a banker before, so I mean,
I know that's what I was going to say.
I know how this game works.
He had the inside track on that.
Listen, I know how this game works.
Hey.
But the thing about it is, it's almost like we have. There's a good client of ours, Dale Hawkins, and he said something about maybe 2 years ago. He said, it's the people who are willing to be shameless are the ones who are going to win. He said, most people are too prideful.
That's so good.
Yeah. He said, you have to be shameless. He said, you can't embarrass me. Yeah. And he makes the statement, he says, I remember having 5 houses, foreclosed upon and 3 vehicles repossessed. And people were like, you still walk around in suits and looking nice and doing whatever and knowing, whatever. He said, I know where I'm going. I can't control the market that made all these things happen. And so he jokes, he tells a joke and said, listen, so at that time when my business failed, I was doing approximately about $425 in net income personally. So he said, but now I do somewhere around $8 million in net income personally. He said, I'm asking you the question, was it worth it or not? You know, so he was just talking about being shameless. He said, if you got vision, if you've got direction, and you know that where you're going is temporary, then whatever you have to endure in the short term, you're endured in the short term because you've got vision. But the challenge that people have is, and I think, you know, all of us have experienced it, we don't have people in general don't have the mentors that they need to kind of help them understand what stage they are in the entrepreneurial game, if I can say it that way. Because for me, I had really good mentors, but reading the biographies of men and women of, you know, in business really helped me understand what stage I was. So when things, you know, weren't working, or it appeared as if things weren't working, I had these stories in my head of real life men and women who were like, hold on for a second. I remember when stuff wasn't working either. These were the things that I did when things didn't look like it was working. And so not having mentorship, not having those relationships, it can make you feel as if you're on an island somewhere and nobody knows. Well, no, there's people who know that same struggle. But at the same time, if you can see yourself in the story from an emotional intelligence standpoint, see yourself in the story, and then ask yourself the question, how do I narrate my life so that this story has the best possible chance of ending in my success? Like, how do I narrate that? What do I tell myself? Because we talk about emotional intelligence, right? We are, you know, metacognition, the ability to think about our thinking. So what do I need to tell myself right now? As opposed to just feeling, no, what do I need to tell myself? Okay, during that period of time, okay, Marcus, this is what I need to tell myself. And some of those lessons were, no one else's story is yours. Because when you walk in dialysis every day, and again, thankfully I was able to pray for people and be an encouragement to people, and people were an amazing encouragement to me on some of those very difficult days, right? Made me laugh, that kind of thing. But you walk in there and it's hopeless in most dialysis centers. Like, no one is in there saying, I'm getting off of this. When you walk in most dialysis centers, it's like, this is the rest of my life.
Yeah, right.
Like, that's
They've
the posture.
that.
Yeah, and here I am. I've got a totally different posture, totally different mindset. And so that was, you know, it was a little different. But at the same time, that was a part of the story that I needed to tell myself. When I walked in that dialysis center for Cineas, you know, in Steel Creek, and again, fantastic staff who were there, who took care of me for, you know, right at 10 months. They would always say, "Man, Mr. Benjamin, you always find a reason to smile." You know, I said, because this is not going to be long, you know. And my nephrologist, you know, all good people at, you know, well, Mr. Benjamin, you know, we got to get your arm ready for your fistula, you know, because this is your long-term dialysis solution. I said, we're not doing a fistula because this is not going to be long-term.
Come on.
They're like, well, no, Mr. Benjamin, you know, I said, whose arm is this? Okay. We're not doing a fistula because this is not going to be long term.
I love it.
And every couple of weeks, you know, they would come around. Well, Mr. Benjamin, I get you ready for your fistula.
No,
I'm not sure what you're going to get me ready for because we're not getting a fistula.
A fistula for me.
You can wash my arm, but
Yeah,
that's about all
we're not doing it, you know. And like I said, if I'm gonna lose, I'm gonna lose on my terms. I'm not gonna lose on somebody else's terms. I can't lose and then wonder if I should have done. You know what I'm saying? No, if I'm going to lose, it's like winning a game, right? We hooping. It's like, I know one thing. If the guy's taking that last shot, you better have made a shot that game. Because what we're not going to do is you taking a shot and you ain't made one all game. Now, we're not losing on you. We're not losing on that dude. Listen, did you make a shot? Nah, you're not a factor. Go in the corners. You're not a factor. You are not a factor in this scenario. So that's kind of what I'm saying is like the guy, Dr. Anders Ericsson, who I followed him. Well, I mean, he's, you know, passed away now, but he was a PhD at Florida State, and he was the editor-in-chief of the Cambridge Encyclopedia of Expert Performance, which is you know, I don't recommend anybody to buy it. I mean, because, I mean, the book is like probably 2,000 pages or whatever, because it's a compilation of experts across the world who are writing academically about expert performance in all of the domains. I mean, from academics to athletics to business and so forth. So it's a fantastic resource to have, but you're not gonna buy it to read it because you know first. But at any rate, he would make the statement that the brain doesn't know the difference between a literal activity and an imagined one.
Yes.
And so all of these case studies they would have of artists and musicians and athletes or whatever, when they were using visualization to talk about. And I mean, there's so many of these case studies, like the difference between the people actually playing the violin and practicing it for 3 weeks versus the people who were just visualizing playing the violin in an expert level. Like the plus or minus is like negligible. And they never touched the violin. It was just all in their mind. They were visualizing the same process that the people were going through who were actually playing the violin. So again, there were so many of these points of reference that I had that conjoined with scripture that just helped me to kind of see what was a very difficult experience, differently than a lot of people, which in turn, by the grace of God, created an outcome that a lot of people just didn't have. And so when I tell people about it, they're just like, and I'm like, listen, there are videos out there. You can find them. I mean, MUSC did an article. I can send an article to you because there's no way you're up at 5 in the gym playing for 2 hours, doing this and doing that. And you had, but that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
Dude, that's so good. When I played sports growing up, I remember, my dad would say after some games I play, he'd like, you weren't playing to win there. You were playing not to lose. And, at the time, young kid, I didn't really understand it too much, but it was so true. As I grew, I started to see this in life. Am I playing to win or am I playing not to lose? And as I hear like this story of, when they're coming to your arm and, we're going to put this in long-term solution, you're looking at them, you're saying, no, I'm going to play to win.
I'm playing to win.
I'm playing to win. I'm not going to play not to lose, to put this in and hope that I don't lose or hope that, this and that happens. I'm playing to win. And, it's just so interesting. I think there's so many life lessons in sports, so many life lessons in just life in general that apply to business and vice versa. Kids, parenting, I could talk all day about the lessons I've learned from being a father. But dude, that is such an incredible story you have, man. Like having you on and just sharing this with us. Like, I mean, I'm filled with just like, what are the things in my life that I'm kind of afraid to go into, and it just makes me want to just go in, press in, and play to win. Your story is very encouraging.
Yeah, watching your blood cycle in and out of your body like that for 4 hours, it just gives you a different perspective of everything else, right? When you're whatever decisions I have to make, whatever tough, conversations I have to have, whatever clients you're dealing with or whatever staff issues or whatever, it just makes those things very, very small. Like I need to go handle this and it's going to be a challenging conversation, but it's nowhere compared to sitting there watching blood cycle out of your body for 4 hours. So, and I'm not saying that, people should have these, these grandiose experiences in order for them to have a different perspective of life. But at the same time, I am saying that I think you referenced it earlier. Difficulty has a way of building a type of muscle that ease doesn't. And even with us building, I know I would think that each one of us with what we're doing, there's a generational component. So we want to do we want to do things for our kids, for our grandkids, want to create something that they can benefit from, all those types of things, right? But at the same time, it's almost like Malcolm Gladwell talks about there's a such thing as too much. And by too much meaning too much availability of ease that actually creates a downward morality or a cascading resilience. Because, and he uses the example in the book, he says, your kid comes to you and asks you for $150 to go to the movies and go hang out or whatever, but you've given them $150, a couple of times already, in the course of a month. He says it's kind of hard for you to tell them you don't have $150 or no when you got a Ferrari sitting in the garage, and you've got a lake house and he said, so there is an upper limit to wealth, to when wealth actually becomes something that is negative, because then who's teaching the values of resilience? And I won't call the particular company's name, but there's a particular company that we know, $1 billion company, and the grandson of the founder had to start from ground zero in that company. Now, mind you, the company when he was born was already $1 billion company. So you can kind of, he grows up, he goes off to college, you have to go to college, he went to college, then he actually went into the Marines for a few years, then he came back, now you got to go do this, now you got to do that. And so he had to work his way through the ranks of that company, starting off in like what we would call a warehouse in that sense. My point is, even though they're an extremely wealthy family, somewhere along the lines, they learned that if we just allow our children or grandchildren to experience the ease of what we've done, they're not going to have the resilience to maintain and manage what we have built. And so when you look at the wealthiest guys, you look at whether it be, and I'm not, throwing anybody under the bus, they've said it themselves. You look at Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, and they're trying to give all of their money away. And two of them even said because they don't trust their children with it.
Yeah.
Wow.
They're trying to give away as much money as they can because, again, there is an upper limit to wealth when character isn't developed. Because then whatever has been built is going to be lost because they don't have the resilience to manage it.
We had a guy on
I was just
in
thinking the same
Nashville,
thing.
Lance Welch. He wrote a book, The Legacy Navigator. Is that correct? It's all about building legacy, being intentional with your generational wealth. Now, wealth is a component,
Correct.
but also raising, strong men.
That's
right, with strong values.
Well, he said one thing that was jumping out to me. I was thinking the same thing. He said, giving your kids an easy life is going to do nothing but harm them. And, it's what we talked about this earlier. Like, we don't want a hard life, but man, the muscle that is built through the challenges and the adversity that we face. If you're a man of faith, like we are, I know God's on my side, so, I'm never in it alone. And so I have that as my anchor. But, he gave all these examples of people, the kids that were just giving this, and his whole deal with the legacy is that he gave the statistics of how often all the money, typically with the legacy, we just think of the inheritance financially, but there's a lot more aspects that go into it.
Yes, there is.
Within like the first generation, all the wealth was gone because they didn't teach them how to manage that wealth, and they just gave it to him on a silver platter. And you sharing that story of how he had to go to college, he went into the Marines, he had to do, he was a blue collar worker and a white collar worker, climb the ladder to get all that. It built so much muscle to where when he was given that, he was able to manage that and then pass it down probably through generations as well. And so that's so encouraging, because so often we get things just served to us on a silver platter. And as a parent, we're all parents. We want the best for our kids. It's like if my daughter asks for something, I want to give her the world, but at the same time, it's like, all right, what can I teach her?
Right.
To work a little bit for it, or, to have to push yourself, because it's easy just to put your hand out, and you start doing that over and over again, you're going to get entitled. You're going to expect, hey, the world's just going to always give to me. Hold on. You got to fight for it a little bit. You got to work for it a little bit.
My wife is a therapist and a realtor. So I get, a whole lot of, free and unsolicited advice,
Right. Hey, don't we all?
And then that's not even the wife factor. It's like, man, listen, you add some expertise on things. It's like, man, listen,
You certified.
I'm certified to tell you how messed up you are right now. But I bring it up because we were doing an event a couple years ago, and she made a statement about the culture of resilience and how it's important for communities to foster resilience through mentorship and through exposure, so that the kids that are being raised in a context are able to see men and women who are resilient, who didn't give up, who didn't quit, who persisted, etc. And she was connecting that to, the growing rates of depression, the growing rates of suicide, the growing rates of, and even in her case, which is part of what her, PhD work is in this excessive rate of growth in anti-anxiety medications. That, and I don't remember the exact statistics, so I'm gonna be a little bit off here, but it's somewhere around 6 out of 10 people.
It's a long line, man.
Walking around are on some type of anti-anxiety medication, and the age of it is getting younger and younger. They're prescribing this stuff in elementary school. Think about that for a second. You're 7, you're 8, and you're taking an anti-anxiety medication. And what she was connecting that to was the culture of resilience, or the absence of a culture of resilience, because there are so many people who are connected to stories of failure, absence of resilience, etc. I mean, and I say this, and it's nowhere near comical, but it can sometimes sound a little bit that, and it's not designed to make that, because we've experienced, some tragic losses in our family over the last, 30 to 45 days. But it's like when you go on social media, it's like if you're not aware, it would seem as if somebody's dying all the time. You know what I'm saying? Because you kind of look like, man, somebody's passing away, somebody's mom, somebody's grandmom, somebody's whatever. And it just kind of creates a culture of death when in reality, people have always died. The difference is we're more connected than we've ever been before.
Absolutely.
We're more aware of what's happening. But the reality of it is the rate hasn't changed as much as what our mind is telling us. So if you take that and apply it to a 7-year-old who's on social media or a 10-year-old who's on social media, what are they seeing?
Yeah.
So to them, what we're selling them is this mindset of brokenness, anxiety, fear, bullying, etc., because that becomes a pervasive message. And now they can't see the world outside of that filter. And so that's some of the, the wife therapy stuff that she, talking to me about all the time. But she connects that to entrepreneurship.
Oh, no, absolutely.
She connects to entrepreneurship because if they're not entrepreneurial communities where people see resilience, see opportunity, see how people overcome challenges, etc., then within an entrepreneurial community, you have the absence of resilience, and then you have people quitting businesses, failing in business, etc., and it's just normal as opposed to an entrepreneurial culture of resilience.
Because they don't market the hard work.
No.
They don't market the resilience. They market the overnight success, how easy it is. You take this, you come to this. It's at your fingertips.
Right.
It's all about instant gratification.
Right.
That's why I take my boys everywhere. I take them to the gym. My son was like, "Oh, Dad, you actually hit a 3." I'm like, "Oh,
he's decent.
He's
decent." But I'm like,
Dad,
"Hey,
you're decent."
But yesterday when you weren't there, I hit like 5. Come on, son.
Listen, I need you to watch this thing the
But
whole
now,
time.
video the next one. It comes back like, 1 out of 100 moves I get wrong. But that one that I get just right, where my body comes back and to where I'm like 25 and I hit that move, it's like business, right? You gotta keep trying those moves. You gotta keep pushing, right?
Man, listen, my mind is just going so many places right now. I'm going back to Anders Ericsson because he was one of, so Malcolm Gladwell popularized the 10,000 hours, right? He sort of popularized it, but the research that was done behind that was Anders Ericsson, and of course, and his team of experts from around the world. But it wasn't just about 10,000 hours, which is where most people missed it in the sauce, right? They missed it in the marketing, but it was about intentional, deliberate practice. So it's not just practice. It's not just 10,000 hours of doing something over and over. It's intentional, deliberate practice. It is the constant evolution of intelligence in an action. So fast forwarding, we've been talking hoops, right? So you got Steph Curry, right? I mean, Steph Curry is Steph, right? Chef Curry for a reason, right? But when you think about the fact that a made basket to Steph Curry in a workout is not a shot that goes in the basket. A made basket to him is a shot that goes in the basket and doesn't touch anything, the rim or the net. Now, most of us, we want to swish, right? But because he shot so much volume of shots in intentional practice, just the ball going in the rim doesn't help him get to the next level.
That's a really good point.
So for him, the ball has to go through the rim, through the net, and touch nothing and go straight through. So when you think about that, that means he spent much more than 10,000 hours in intentional, deliberate practice, improving upon his shot technique. So you think about it from a business standpoint, right? And Steph Curry from a career, I don't know his numbers off the top of my head, but I would think it's somewhere around 43%, somewhere in there. He's probably somewhere around 43%, in a career 3-point shooter, right? So you think about it, he's still missing almost 6 out of 10 shots, right? But he's the greatest shooter that we've ever seen from an NBA standpoint. But what if we apply that concept to business? To your point earlier, it's like, man, if we're intentionally every day applying expert practice to business, intentionally doing these things, these habits, having debrief, right? Having someone, for me, that's Charlie Williams. Charlie, every 3 to 4 months, we sit down. Okay, Marcus, let's evaluate these last 3 to 4 months, et cetera, make sure I'm on track, so on and so forth. Because his expert eye can say, Marcus, hold on for a second. That action, no matter how many times you do it, is never going to give you that result. So you've got to change that action or change the outcome that you're desiring, because right now they don't match each other. So to your point earlier about the incubator, entrepreneurial community, etc., it's important to have that, because if not, we can be doing the wrong thing 3 years in a row,
right? And
then we quit. When in reality, the problem wasn't, the idea that we had. The problem was we had the wrong habits attached to the idea. Going back to my first book, right? The problem wasn't the book. The problem was you had the wrong strategy. You had the wrong habits.
Absolutely. Well, Marcus, dude, this was so good having you on.
So
you know,
insightful,
at the end of all our episodes, we like to drive people, if you have like a website or social media where people can follow along, learn more about you. Or I know you just had the event last month out here. If you have another event coming up, I mean, where can people follow you along?
Yeah, so all social channels is at Marcus D. Benjamin. All social. Primarily, I hang out mostly on LinkedIn and Instagram primarily. So that's the best place for them to connect with me personally. You know, our corporate our website is being restructured, you know, presently. So most of our clients, we say, most of our clients don't necessarily look out for us on the web, but we encourage people to connect with us on social at Marcus D. Benjamin. You know, or MarcusDBenjamin.com is active, but at Marcus D. Benjamin.
Awesome.
And I feel like really with Marcus, we just got the tip of the iceberg. Today, so we're gonna have to have another session.
You come back on with us.
Listen, let's come out and listen. We're talking hoops. We're talking life. We're talking business. We're talking God. Listen, these are my kind of conversations, man. I don't even know what time it is.
Hey, man, we didn't even get on strategy, scalability, AI, analytics. Look, we've had some deep conversation. I know our listeners, they would get so much wisdom and nuggets. And just one thing, you know, you're never too old for a coach, for a mentor. Man. You're never too old to stop growing. Always keep growing. Always keep learning. Always keep, you know, trying.
That's
right.
It.
Like never fail.
And so much today, you know, was we didn't touch into all the strategy, you know, deep into the business, you know, kind of all the things, but today was mindset. You know, which is foundational for all that stuff. You know, too often, I mean, our mindset, we need to shift it, you know, from a glass is half empty, you know, to a glass is half full. You know, that's what he said. He's going to the doctor. They're like, Marcus, you always have something to smile about, kind of a thing. Yes. That perspective, that attitude, that mindset right there is like the key to success, you know, by just having attitude, having the right mindset. And so I think everything we said today was perfect, you know, to tee up for the next time we have Marcus on, to where, all right, you brought us in the mindset. And so how has your mindset taken your business from, you know, where you were, you know, to where you are now?
I look forward to that.
Awesome.
All right, guys, in the words of Marcus Benjamin, stop playing.
Stop playing.
We need to talk about that one too.
Awesome, man. This is awesome. Good stuff.
Thanks for listening and joining us on the Love Your Brand podcast. Stay tuned for the next episode, and remember, share the love.